For today's history short story, we take a detour over to the Mediterranean theater of World War II. Sadly undercovered, even now in historical documentation, and certainly in popular culture, there are many stories of heroism in this theater. Equally as many stories of actions that, had they involved the Germans or Japanese, would probably have been plastered all over old History Channel documentaries. But since it involves the Italians, no one cares about it. Anyway, one of those stories is that of the old 1920s vintage destroyer, Espero. I really hope I'm not butchering that. This old turbine-class destroyer, small by World War II standards, was never going to be a major factor in the war, in her own right anyway. Maybe by virtue of serving with other destroyers in a squadron? Were it not for the fact that she was involved in the first surface engagement between Italian and Allied forces, that is. In fact, that was all of 17 days after Italy entered the war, so very early. For a short background here, Italy had colonies in North Africa that, obviously, needed supplied after entering the war. Offensives toward Egypt or defending against things from Egypt could hardly run on just grit and determination. You need shells and food and other manpower and all that sort of stuff. Convoys and carrying those supplies south from Italy were risky, in light of the British Mediterranean fleet, though. And I suppose, while it was still a going concern, the French fleet, though that wouldn't last long. Thus, supplying these colonies was necessary, but dangerous enough that destroyers could, and would, be pressed into service to do it. Similar concept to the Tokyo Express over in the Pacific, really. Espero would be part of a 3-destroyer squadron doing such supply runs when, on June 28, 1940, she would be attacked by the Royal Navy. Espero, alongside 2 of her sister ships, immediately turned away to retreat. This is, perhaps, unsurprising when one considers that the Royal Navy force attacking them was made up of no fewer than 5 light cruisers, which collectively outmassed and outgunned the entire Italian squadron by quite a significant margin. Of course, this is where things go wrong. Espero, again an old ship by this point, had one of her boilers give out and reduce her speed to 25 knots. Her commanding officer, realizing quite quickly that he would never outrun the British cruisers, ordered the other 2 destroyers to make smoke and retreat. Espero, meanwhile, would open fire on the British to take their attention. 3 torpedoes fired at the cruisers missed, but they did slow the British down slightly as they were forced to dodge them. Mind you, the British weren't dumb, they split their squadron here. Some for Espero, some to try and get around the smoke and focus on the other destroyers. Through it all, the British were firing so many shells at Espero that it is described as a deluge of 6-inch salvos. Just imagine how many shells it takes to be considered a deluge of the things. In spite of this, the Italians would actually be the ones to draw a metaphorical first blood. A single 4.7-inch shell from Espero actually hit HMS Liverpool, though it did not do appreciable damage. Very easily could have, though, considering the splinters from that hit the warheads of 2 of the cruiser's torpedoes. That could have ended very badly for the British, eh? As it is, after over an hour really, of dodging and firing back, Espero would be hit in her engine room, which crippled her remaining boilers and left her dead in the water. Though it did take closing to 15,000 yards for the British to actually pull that off. Since that hit brought Espero to a halt and ended her determined distraction, the British began to chase her sisters again. However, their commander realized they were desperately low on ammo, so he broke off after only 10 or so minutes of actually chasing them. Darkness was falling as well, which would have only made that particular issue worse for the British. As the rest of the British cruisers set off for Malta, HMAS Sydney, she of the later infamous Cormoran battle, was left behind to finish Espero off. Even crippled and dead in the water, the Italian crew still fired another salvo of their own at Sydney as she approached. Brave, but ultimately just a last act of defiance that didn't actually hit. That said, at 6,000 yards, it still took Sydney 4 more salvos to finally put Espero down for good. Fires raged and explosions wrecked the destroyer as her crew abandoned ship. Reports indicate that her captain went down with her, as 47 of the 225 men aboard were rescued by Sydney. The Australians, conscious of the danger from Italian submarines, then vacated the area, though, in a rare case of humanitarianism in warfare, they left behind a cutter with food and other supplies for any survivors still in the water. Don't have any indication the survivors actually used it, though, at least not that I've been able to find. Because only 6 more survivors would be found, 14 days later, mind you, drifting on a raft by an Italian submarine. Now, leaving aside Espero's crew's heroism here in regards to saving her sister ships, the quote about the British ships after the engagement shows just how this went for them. Morning showed the muzzles of Sydney's guns stripped of paint, which hung in long reddish-gray streamers almost to the deck. Just think for a moment how many shells you have to fire to strip the paint from your gun barrels. That's not exactly easy to do. The British did succeed in sinking Espero by using up nearly 5,000 rounds of 6-inch ammo to do it. That's not a typo. 5,000 rounds of 6-inch ammo to sink one antique old 1920s vintage destroyer. Combined with other existing supply issues, the Mediterranean fleet had, and again, this is not a typo, 800 rounds of 6-inch ammo in stock for its light cruisers. That is the entire Mediterranean fleet and Mediterranean theater. It got bad enough that Cunningham had to cancel Malta convoys because the cruisers didn't have enough ammo. So, Espero, the little destroyer that almost could. She took so much ammo to put down that the British almost completely ran out of it for their light cruisers, all for sinking one old, arguably obsolete, Italian destroyer. One can say she certainly had more of an outsized impact than her design would indicate. And with that, this history short story video comes to an end. If you enjoy the content, please consider dropping a like, and especially a subscribe. I am trying to get to that magical 1,000 number, after all. See you in the next video.